Okay, today I'm going to present you with a technique that's going to help you get inside the heads of your children and make your children actually want to comply, want to cooperate, want to listen, and want to have a relationship with you. So before I get to the technique, I'll start with a famous story about a fifth grade teacher who got up on the first day of school and she told her students that she was going to love them all the same and treat them all the same. But she knew in her heart of hearts that that wasn't true, because right in front of her sat a student. His name was Teddy Stoddard. And Teddy was a very unkempt child, and he wasn't successful in most areas of his life. He wasn't successful socially, academically, athletically, and she had seen him in the schoolyard in previous years, and she knew what he was about. Now, in the school that she worked in, they had a policy where each teacher was required to review each student's portfolio from the previous year. But since he had such a fat file, she decided that she wasn't going to do it before the school year started. She put it on hold. So September, October time came, and, she's teaching her class, doing a nice, decent job, and she decided one night to pull out his folder. And when she pulled out his folder, his old files, this is what she saw. So his first grade teacher wrote that he's a bright child with a ready laugh, he's socially successful, and he's doing well academically. Unfortunately, his second grade teacher wrote that his mother was terminally ill and life at home was getting to be very difficult for him. Sadly, his third grade teacher wrote that his mother had passed away, and of course that was taking a tremendous toll on him. And by the time he got to fourth grade, the teacher had reported that he was struggling across the board in all areas, and he sleeps a lot in class. When she read this, she felt terrible, and she decided at that point that she was going to take a tremendous interest in this child, and she was going to invest in this child what nobody had invested before. The problem was it was a difficult time of year. It was already, by that time they were starting to prepare for school plays. In December time, they have big school plays before they go on their big vacations, and it got really busy. So she did put it in the back of her head that at some point, this was going to be a priority for her. December time came, and it was customary in the school where she worked that each child on the day before December vacation would bring the teacher a gift to show appreciation for what the teacher had done, for the past few months. So it was December something, the last day before vacation, and each child came into class with a beautifully wrapped gift and left it on the teacher's desk. And Teddy walked in, instead of a beautifully wrapped gift, he had a brown paper lunch bag, and it was all crumpled up, and he put it on her desk. And when it came time for her to open all the gifts, of course, she opened up the other children's gifts, and she thanked them, and she said, "This is so beautiful, and I'm going to use it, for this or for that." When she opened up Teddy's gift, the other children started to laugh because it wasn't wrapped beautifully like the other children's gifts were. It was a brown, crumpled lunch bag. And not only that, but when she opened it, it was a half of a perfume bottle, and it was a rhinestone bracelet with missing rhinestones. That's all he had. That's all he found in his house. He didn't have a mother to put a gift together for him. So the children started to laugh a little bit, and Mrs. Thompson just motioned to all the children in the class. She said, "Children, please, let's be respectful." And they did. They listened to her. So what she did was she sprayed the perfume on herself, and she took the rhinestone bracelet and she put it on her wrist. And she said, "Thank you, Teddy. This is so beautiful. I'm really going to enjoy it." And the kids went home that day. They went home for vacation. And Teddy stayed after class, and he came over to her and he said, "Mrs. Thompson, I just want you to know that today you smell just like my mother used to." And he went home, and that day she cried for at least an hour. And she decided from that point on that she was no longer only going to teach reading, writing, spelling, science, social studies, math, vocabulary. She was going to teach children. And when the kids came back from vacation, oh boy, did she teach Teddy. She stayed with him after school every day. She tutored him. She built him up. She complimented him. She praised him. She told him how wonderfully he was doing when he was doing well. She taught him a few social skills. He really started to improve tremendously. And by the end of the school year, she had actually brought him up to be at the top of the class academically. And he even had 2 friends by the end of the year. So, of course, when the school year was over, he stayed, sweet kid. He stayed again in June, and he said to her after class, "Mrs. Thompson, I just want you to know that you're the best teacher I ever had." So she said, "Thank you. I really appreciate that." And he went home. And every few years, Teddy would send her a letter. He would send her a letter in the mail saying, "Mrs. Thompson, I just want you to know I graduated 8th grade. You're still the best teacher I ever had. I graduated high school. You're still the best teacher I ever had." He went on to college and even medical school. He said, "I just want you to know you're still the best teacher I ever had." When he graduated medical school, he signed Teddy Stoddard, MD. And the last letter she received from him was one that described that he would be getting married, and of course his mother wouldn't be able to be there for him. She had passed away many years ago, and he wanted her to come to the wedding and take the place of his mother, to march him down the aisle. So, of course, she accepted that offer. She came to the wedding, she wore the rhinestone bracelet, she put the perfume on herself, and she marched him down the aisle. And after the wedding was over, Teddy went over to her and he said, "You know, Mrs. Thompson, I just want to let you know that you taught me that I can make a difference." And Mrs. Thompson said to him, "No, Teddy, you have it all wrong. You taught me that I can make a difference." So why do I start with this story? What did Mrs. Thompson do that made her stand out so much, that makes this story so famous, that makes us all shed a tear when we hear this story? Is because she got inside Teddy's head with all his challenges, with all his difficulties, and she figured out how to express love to him in a way where he would really feel it. Now, all parents love our children. Of course we love our children. But a lot of times we speak to the children in ways that the child actually doesn't feel the love. And if the child doesn't feel the love in the child's gut, in the child's blood, the child at best is going to listen when you're looking, but not cooperate with you when you're not looking. So if we don't know how to express love to a child where the child really feels it, what happens is two things. One is the child only listens to us when we're looking, and two is we're potentially damaging the relationship. So today I'm going to give you a specific technique that's going to teach you how to speak to your child in a way where the child actually feels the love in the child's gut. And the name of the technique is I tone, you tone. Tone, T-O-N-E. And the reason I call it I tone, you tone is because we're going to learn how to gauge our tone when we speak to children. Here it goes. Whenever we're speaking to a child at any given moment, we can only be speaking from one of two places. Either we're speaking from an I place, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is how I want things to go, or we're speaking from a you place. My tone shows that I'm concerned for you, that I love you, that I want what's good for you. So now our job over the next few days, our homework over the next few days, is going to be for us to pay attention when we're speaking to our children. Am I using an I tone or am I using a you tone? And I'll give you a few examples. Okay. First, let's all think back to who our favorite teachers were. Even if it was 20, 30 years ago, people always remember who their favorite teachers were. Sometimes I'll give a course and I'll ask people, who was your favorite, or could you remember who your favorite teacher was? How many years ago was it? And people will say 25 years ago, my second grade teacher. And then I'll go on to ask them, do you remember what you ate for lunch last Tuesday? No one remembers. Then I'll ask them, who's your worst teacher? Of course, without giving names. So I'll say, 26 years ago, I had this teacher, and this is what she did. She was my worst teacher ever. They still remember her. But then I ask, what did you wear last Thursday? Nobody remembers. What's the common thread? Why do we all remember our favorite teacher? Because our favorite teacher was speaking in a you tone. Our favorite teacher was coming from a place of concern for you, of concern for us. And what's the common thread between all our worst teachers? Is, unfortunately, all our worst teachers were coming from a selfish place of whatever it was that they wanted. So, for example, every teacher wants to have a neat, organized classroom. It's a goal. So a teacher who's coming from a selfish place and using an I tone will say, what's all this garbage all over the place? But a teacher who's coming from a giving place and concern for you, concern for her students, might say something like, we need to clean up so we can have a neat classroom. Same message, completely different tone. If we focus on the tone is my love for you, my concern for you, and the child really feels the tone, the child is much, much, much more likely to want to cooperate. We increase the chances of the child wanting to cooperate tremendously. I'll give you a few more examples. Let's say a child gets a bad mark on a test, a low grade on a test. So the child's upset. The child's putting his head down on his desk. So a teacher who's coming from a selfish place, using an I tone, will say, are you putting your head down because you're upset about your mark? And a teacher who's coming from a giving place will say, are you putting your head down because you're upset about your mark? Same words even. One is using an I tone. One is using a you tone. What's the child's response when the teacher uses an I tone? What's the child's response when the teacher says, are you putting your head down because you got a bad mark? The response is, leave me alone. Go away. So now, half hour later, if the teacher asks that child to do something, the child does not want to cooperate. And what's the child thinking and feeling in his or her gut if the teacher's coming from a you place? If the teacher says, are you putting your head down on your desk because you got a bad mark on a test? The child is feeling like, wow, this teacher really understands me. So now a half hour later, if the teacher asks the child to do something, the child is much more likely to cooperate. So our job is to train ourselves, to train our brains to be speaking to our children as much as we can using a you tone, concern for you. Now, of course, we're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. We need not to be so hard on ourselves. Mistakes are chances for us to grow, chances for us to change. Mistakes are opportunities for us. But what we do need to do is to try to train our brains now from this point on to be using that you tone so that the child feels it and wants to comply with us. I'll give you some examples that could take place in a home. I give you a few examples that could take place in a classroom. So let's say, for example, you're driving carpool and one of your kids has difficulty putting his seatbelt on. So if I'm coming from a selfish place, I might say to the child, put your seatbelt on this second. Now, of course, I love the kid, and the kid needs to wear a seatbelt because it's safe for the child, and I love the child. But if I'm coming from a loving place, I can say something to the child like, I hope you put your seatbelt on right away because I can't drive till you do, and I know you like to get to the schoolyard early to play. So same message. The message is, I can't drive till you have your seatbelt on. But the first one sends a message of, put your seatbelt on this second because I have places to go and I have things to do and I want to start my morning and I want this morning to move along already. And I don't want to be in school late and the principal's going to see and then it's going to be embarrassing for me. When the child feels that our concern is for ourselves, the child doesn't want to listen. When the child feels that we're concerned for the child wants to listen. So if I say to the child, I hope you put your seatbelt on quickly because I really want you to get to school in time, the child might listen, the child might not. Of course, we've increased the chances of the child listening tremendously. But still, at that point, if the child doesn't listen, our job is to come up with maybe a different statement using a you tone. Perhaps that child needs a chart. We're not going to get to that today, using charts to motivate children to do the things that are actually good for them. But either way, when we're speaking to the child in that situation, if we're using the you tone, we are for sure enhancing the relationship with the child. So we're accomplishing two things, really. We're getting the child to be much more likely to cooperate, and we're also improving the relationship with the child. I'll give you one more example. Let's say you need your child to come into a room for something. You need the child to come right away to a room. So you could say to the child, get over here right now. And the message over there is, I want you here right now. I have a night. I need things to move along. I need things to happen. Or you can say to the child, David, come here, please. So in both situations, you need the child to come. But in the first situation, your concern is for yourself. In the second situation, your concern is for your child. I'll just end with, there was a famous speaker who got in front of his crowd at the end of his speech, and he held up a $20 bill, and he asked everybody, he said, how many of you would take this $20 bill for free? And of course, everybody raised their hand. So he took the $20 bill and he crumpled it up. And he said, how many of you would still want it? And everybody, of course, raised their hand. And then he said, how about if I, put it on the floor and step on it? How many of you would still want it? And of course, everybody raised their hand. So why is that? It's a $20 bill. It never loses its value. So everybody wants it, no matter how crumpled up it is, no matter how dirty it is, no matter how many times you threw it on the floor. It's a $20 bill, and it never loses its value. Our children are so precious to us. They never lose their value. They're involved in misbehaviors oftentimes. They get pulled down by the difficulties in our generation, the difficulties in our society. Our job is to be there for them and to send a message of love to them. And we can do that by using the technique that I gave you today, by trying as much as we can to speak to our children using a you tone.